So you're still thinking of me, just like I know you should. I cannot give you everything, you know I wish I could.
I could be brown, I could be blue, I could be violet sky, I could be hurtful, I could be purple, I could be anything you like. I could be brown, I could be blue, I could be violet sky, I could be hurtful, I could be purple, I could be anything you like. I could be brown, I could be blue, I could be violet sky, I could be hurtful, I could be purple, I could be anything you like. I could be brown, I could be blue, I could be violet sky, I could be hurtful, I could be purple, I could be anything you like. I could be brown, I could be blue, I could be violet sky, I could be hurtful, I could be purple, I could be anything you like. I could be brown, I could be blue, I could be violet sky, I could be hurtful, I could be purple, I could be anything you like.
I'm not a perfect person.
About the sunshine, something about you. That's all good as that. There's something about the sunshine. There's something about you. There's something about the sunshine. There's something about you. There's something about the sunshine. There's something about you. There's something about the sunshine. There's something about you. There's something about the sunshine. There's something about you. There's something about the sunshine. There's something about you. There's something about the sunshine. There's something about you. There's something about the sunshine. There's something about you. There's something about the sunshine. There's something about you. There's something about the sunshine. There's something about you. There's something about the sunshine. There's something about you. There's something about the sunshine. There's something about you. There's something about the sunshine. There's something about you. Yeah. There's something about the sunshine. There's something about you. There's something about the sunshine. There's something about you. There's something about the sunshine. There's something about you. Gonna take that one again. There's something about the sunshine. There's something about you. There's something about the sunshine. There's something about you. There's something about the sunshine. There's something about you. Something about the sunshine. Something about you. Something about the sunshine. Yeah. Something about you. I gotta get that one. Yo. Something about the sunshine. Something about you. Motherfucker. Something about the sunshine. Maybe it's fine like that. Yeah. Something about you. Yeah, maybe it's fine like that. Maybe it's fine like that. Maybe it's fine like that. Baby, you're fine like that. Baby, you're fine like that. Maybe it's fine like that. Maybe it's fine like that. Baby, you're fine like that. Baby, you're fine like that. Maybe it's fine like that. Maybe it's fine like that. Maybe you're fine like that. Maybe you're fine like that. Maybe it's fine like that. Always leave a little for Jesus. Maybe it's fine like that. Maybe it's fine like that. Maybe you're fine like that when you're walking around the street. Maybe you're fine like that when I ask you out to meet. Maybe you're fine like that when you walk around the room. Baby, you're fine like that when you make that booty go boom. Baby, got a something about the sunshine. Something about a baby girl. Something about you. Stir up the common whiskey together. Something about the sunshine. That tastes good. I said, something about you. Something about you, baby. Yeah. Something about I've been done too much yelling already, and so now I can't sing. Yo, yeah, something about that bitch. I said it's something all about that shit. Something about that bitch. I said it's something all about that shit. Something about the way you move in the room. Something about the way you do that too. I said it's something about the way that you vibe. I said it's something inside. I said it's something inside. I said it's something like that. Something about the sunshine. Something about you. Something about the sunshine. Something about you. Something about the sunshine. Something about you.
Quem tem limite é cartão e município. Nós temos é talento e qualidade.
Tu fais quoi? Tu fais quoi? Tu fais quoi? Tu fais quoi? Non, Myrna, connard! Imbécile!
This one's for all my baby girls. I see your comments, ladies, and they make me smile.
Preste atenção, eu vou mandar essa
This video is sponsored by BetterHelp. Let's do some more tests. We don't even need the strings anymore. So we're going to donate them to heaven. Oh shit. Piano makers probably thought, well, we can never have too many screws. There's no one who's going to pick this apart anyway. For piano, how do you feel? Oh. 2D piano, frick yeah! I can't believe I got it back together again. Wow! The deeper this project goes, the more I realize this will be such a disaster. Okay, let's start this power grid. First button. This looks nice. No electrocute. Damn! Oh wow, it's like a tornado in here. So I literally almost fried my brain here because I wanted one more blue LED to turn on, but I had completely forgotten that I had already connected the 10 100,000 volt transformers at head height. Oh shit. Ah! I didn't think I connected. I really... The tornado was too distracting. Okay, are you ready? This is it. I don't hope in that way. No, that's not it. Whoa. Okay, that's really good actually. Oh. I don't want to be close to that. It's 4 circuits on. None of them work so far. There was a parenthesis missing in the code. Okay, I'm ready. Attempt 4. I would kind of unalive if I for some reason touch this. That's why I'm scared. Oh, did I feel something? I don't know. I don't know if I felt. I'm probably imagining again. So right now we have 1 circuit working. So this key works. This. That kind of works well, to be honest. I did not expect switching to hammers to even work. See the arcing between the hammers. I don't know, I'm probably imagining. It feels like it's sticking on my body sometimes. Okay, let's do some more testing on 1 circuit before we add more. Okay, I can't breathe. I think I unalived for mentally. Why did that happen? Why? It's kind of unpredictable now. I don't know if it was ever predictable, but you get what I mean. Yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. This is with 1 circuit. We're going to have 10. You see what it did? I don't even know what it did. Oh, the Arduino lagged. I understand what happened. The Arduino froze, and when the Arduino freezes, it just continuously outputs a tone. I had released the key, so the hammer went back, but it still wanted to output a tone. As soon as it lags, it's going to do that. I can't do this. Sorry, guys. I will do it. I'm an engineer. That's it for today. I can't do this. It's time to do a lot more circuits. Let's play 2. Damn it! Both of them output through the same hammer. Oh no! God! Oh shit! I hate when that happens. Yeah, an Arduino froze. That's the most intense lag I ever seen. Come on. Very high. Ah, it's so loud too. It smells so much ozone here. Okay, I will regret doing this. Yep, I regret doing that. It seems like we burned up the most important circuit, so it took me 3 days to get this to work again, so yeah, that was a really bad idea. I almost forgot how terrifying it was. What do you think? It's a beautiful piece of art. Ow! Ow, what? How did I get the shot? I got it through my... Was it the keys? I guess if the voltage is high enough... Okay, I'm getting used to this. It's kind of singing. I think we should be able to control the loudness with how we move the hammer. That's pretty cool. I don't know how to use that information though. Let's try chord. We just added some delay to the code to see if things works better, so let's try. Please work. Wow! Oh my god! It does work better. You see how when I press a chord, all of them goes through the same hammer, and that's what we're going to try to prevent somehow. He jumps from another place now.
You basically need to isolate every 2 hammers.
It's just jumping between the hammers instead of using the wires. But this is going to prevent that. Unfortunately, I built it the wrong way. We can't really see anything. Oh my god, it works! The sound is way better for some reason. I don't know why. That's insane. Do you see anything? My engineering wasn't precise enough, so you see the keys get stuck. Don't lag. Ah! No. So I taped every other hammer. Just burns the tape. The hammers can't get stuck to the acrylic sheets if it's a part of it. Whoa. That was my only good idea left. Oh, F you. I don't know what to do anymore. It's living its own life. We need a new plan. Okay, now I'm just throwing everything I have on the piano. We have the acrylic sheets between the hammers. We have a ton of rubber between the cables. And also I used all the electrical tape I have. I consider the project fail if this doesn't work. It kind of works. It doesn't make good sounds in the back of the piano, but this is such a disaster still though. And the hissing that comes afterwards, it's perfect. Insane. Oh shit, that's not good sound. Don't have any lights. Ah, shush. We need to do something about this. You hear that sound when I pull it back? It's when we break the arc, we get all this noise. So QRS, who sent me the optical sensor strip, they gave me special access, so I've been able to make it turn off at the earlier stage of when you release the key. So now it should work a lot better, I hope. Oh, did we get rid of the issue? Yeah, you see? It turns off before there's any problems. Damn, it works so good. Whoa. It works really good. Stop lagging! Ah! I know what it sounds like. I've been thinking this sounds like something else. Okay, listen to this. When you press a key on a piano, the volume is super high and then it goes down quickly. But since this one, it starts low in volume and right before you release the key, it goes up a lot. So it sounds like we are reversing someone playing piano.
What's in the left hand? Thank you, Kyle. I would have not wanted that one.
Way! Whoa. Oh. It doesn't smoke from the steak, it's my insulation that smokes. I never thought I would say these words, but let's sear this steak in a G major. No, actually, this is kind of sad, to be honest. It's time to become a part of my creation. It probably created some toxic chemical or something that did not taste edible. Yeah. Oh, something left. Now I will have some of that energy to answer 1,000 of your comments on this video. Let me know your best guitar ideas. And thanks to Goran and Discord for helping me make this thing. And join the Discord if you want to help on future projects. And if you want to see when Electroboom helped me make a piano the Electroboom way, click here. Click, click, click. It's really fun.
doctor, what is wrong with me? This supermarket life is getting long.
Okay, that's why. What? Can kill. Like a something. Hello. Dude, it's here's all of the wrong with that. Cool. No, but for WWE, like they talk about Prime just as much as they talk about WrestleMania during WrestleMania. They're like, they'll like when it's like thrown on ring, they're like, oh, the hydration. Prime hydration station. Exactly. When Logan Paul's wrestling, I mean, I'm glad he partnered with the WWE.
No, he's perfect.
Or whatever.
He's perfect for a bad guy in the WWE. You don't even have to do it. Everyone hates him. All he has to do is open his mouth and everyone. It's
fair.
He went like Prime. He turn out like they gave him. They literally had like wrestling shit like that. So he's not. Oh, it was so funny. Now he's like word like, actually,
okay,
and like that was his. He like pretty much like runs stuff there, and like they're supposed to be PG. And the Rock's there like. So fucking shit together. I fucking own you. And like they censor messed up. So like you heard all of that and then they censored like the next like 5 seconds because like they messed up the censor. It was funny.
When's it on again?
It starts at 7.
Cool.
But
Is this the last night?
Yeah. The good thing about Peacock, I can miss like the first half, start watching halfway through, and then when it's over, I can just the stuff that I can just rewatch and
This is WrestleMania.
It's cool. I've been telling you
When I
for
was
years.
a kid, it's the close.
It was only like
WrestleMania,
pay-per-view or some
yeah.
shit.
WrestleMania 1 through 10 VHS. Like that was all like watched. Like that was any pay-per-view I ever watched. Till like
Yeah,
this
all the
past
girls
year.
at work were talking about it. Oh, it's WrestleMania in Philly this weekend. Okay. You should. Why didn't you go if it was in Philly?
Dude, it was so ridiculous.
Is it?
Steve already like looked into it.
Oh. Crazy.
They shouldn't have had it in Philly. It was like felt like it was like 45 last night. There's like wrestlers out there in like literal speedos. There's like
Is
girls.
that the link?
Yes, outside.
Oh.
And I was like, this was a terrible.
Is it
place.
normally outside? I thought it was always like in an arena. I thought it was at the Wachovia
No,
Center.
they've done
or
it
whatever.
outside before, but they usually have it in like Florida or California, somewhere where it makes sense.
Oh.
Yeah, and they shouldn't have been Philly.
Feel it is.
Only
Yep.
thing like bad people.
I feel like Philly, Detroit, Kansas City, they're probably their biggest cities.
That's why like everyone,
Maybe like
everyone
Dallas.
was like, why are they having it? in
Mobile.
Philadelphia?
It's gotta be big in Mobile.
Places where there's places that like wrestling, different wrestling promotions. It's all
Okay.
different.
Isn't it all WWE?
Well, that makes money relevant.
Yeah.
The owner or gave his son like $1 to start a rival wrestling. Letting the wrestling and giving them enough money to literally do nothing. It's kind of funny. They only like them. Atlanta because they're based out of like. Turner started rival. He actually did for like, popular and like Mr.
Like Donald Trump with the XFL. You don't remember?
Well, no,
I was
that
protesting
didn't go
Donald
like that at
Trump
all.
20 years ago.
And got to both.
Yeah, but then Donald Trump got bought a team and bankrupted the league.
I think it was.
Okay.
Like their whole thing was.
You know, it
trying
was
to-
worked for many years until Donald Trump got involved in it. Yeah, really. Yeah.
Yeah, with this new, they're called. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there were people that like swore they would never. Do so bad they actually wound up coming back, and were like out. Jaguar. In WWE, everyone's like back in WWE, and like everything like better than it's ever been. So.
Magnetic.
Fine.
Why not?
Capture knowledge. Get this.
Yeah.
That's coming.
Magnets. How does it work? Sponsored by. I'm sponsored by pop corners. We only pop for corners.
Pop corners, meth in a bag.
Before I get my industrial grade glass. Great.
What is the hot life of a color TV? What is the shelf life of a teenage queen? Western woman. Western girl. Newshound sniffs the air when Jessica Horn goes down. He latches onto that symbol of detachment. Attracted by the peeling away of feeling. The celebrity of the abused shell, the bell. Western woman. Western girl. Western woman. Western girl. The children on Melrose strut their stuff. There's absolute zero cold enough. And out in the valley, warm and clean, the little ones sit by the TV screen. No thoughts to think, no tears to cry. All sucked dry, down to the very last breath. Bartender, what is wrong with me? Why am I so out of breath? The captain said, excuse me, ma'am, the species has amused itself to death. Amused itself to death. It has amused itself to death. Amused itself to death. We watched tragedy unfold. We did as we were told, bought and sold. It was the greatest show on earth. was over. We owed north, we drove our racing cars. We ate our last few jars of caviar. And somewhere out there in the stars, a keen-eyed lookout spied a flickering light. Our last hurrah. And when they found our shadows go round the TV set, they ran down every lead, they repeated every test, they checked out all the data on their list. But then the alien anthropologists admitted they were still break, but on eliminating every other reason for our sad demise. They love the only explanation that this species has abused itself to death. No tears to cry. No feelings left. This species has amused itself to death. Amused itself to death. Amused itself to death.
View of intelligence in the 1976 time. He got his laugh, and I got my little hurt inside from it, but it made me determined that I'm going to approach this job with pride, and they can have all the jokes they want on television about the CIA. It's vital to the national security of the United States. And I feel so dedicated and strongly about it that I just wanted to wedge that in, apropos of no question you've asked. How long are you going to stay? I serve at the pleasure of the president. I understand that. How long are you going to stay? As long as the president wants me to stay, Mike. There's no politics in this thing for me. Good heavens. You'd have to be hallucinating to think there was any political mileage in this kind of a job.
I think now would be a good time for us to not focus on the present, but take a trip into the past, into the annals of American history. And for you guys, begin part one of our long-anticipated history of the life and career of another one-term president. That's right, folks. I'm talking about George Herbert Walker Bush. This has been sort of percolating in the Chapo ether for quite some time now, and we're going to give a go at narrating for you basically the sort of background of the Bush family and the life and career of George H.W. Bush. I think up until about the Kennedy assassination. There is so much to talk about here. There are so many different threads that run through his life and connect it to, these truly grand and secret parts of American history that, we will not have time in this episode to get into Watergate or Iran-Contra or any of the things he did as director of the CIA or his, how he got to be director of the CIA in the first place, or his presidency. So this will I think part one, we're going to do our best here to lay out the early life and career of George H.W. Bush, going from being in the U.S. Navy, a U.S. Navy pilot, to a Yale Skull and Bones guy, to a Texas oil guy, to a senator, to director of the CIA, and just how all of these threads in his family and life do seem to coalesce in Dallas, November 22nd, 1963. I've done my best to sort of summarize and outline a lot of this information, but hopefully my co-hosts Felix and Matt will be able to fill in some of the gaps, and we'll just see where this takes us. I should say off the bat that a lot of the information I'm going off here comes courtesy of journalist Russ Baker's book, Family of Secrets. And I think it should be noted before we go much further that the book Family of Secrets was excoriated by his fellow journalists and people like at the Washington Post and Los Angeles Times and their book reviews and his fellow journalists when it came out. I just want to read one clip here. Tim Rutan, former media critic for the Los Angeles Times, described the book as an example of the paranoid style of literature as described by Richard Hofstadter. He says here, what makes Baker's book singularly offensive is the way it recklessly impugns, in the most disgusting possible way, the reputations not simply of men and women now dead, but of the living. So, guys, let's do it. I mean, if there's one thing we're good at, it is calumny directed against.
Oh my God,
living and
defaming
dead.
folks is a key core competency over here.
I mean, you know, like a lot of the criticisms of the book is that it relies heavily on sort of innuendo, guilt by association, and just sort of seeming to suggest a uniting thread to disparate events and people that may not warrant it. But when you do assemble all those disparate events and people, as it relates to the life of George H.W. Bush, a certain outline does begin to take shape. And I think like a good comparison to this book would be Tom O'Neill's Chaos, in that there is sort of one inciting fact or incident that put Baker on this fucking lifelong fucking trip down this endless rabbit hole of like basically the secret history of power in America in the last like latter half of the 20th century. And it's such that there's an astonishing amount of information is gathered and marshaled to point towards the outlines of something that suggests something sinister. But there is never, of course, going to be anything close to a capital T journalistic truth standard of like a definitive answer to anything. But that has never stopped us in the past.
Reading Family of Secrets, I've been reading it at the same time as I've been reading NATO's Secret Armies. And one thing I was wishing during all of this is that I do think Robert Caro's book about Robert Moses, The Power Broker, is an essential book for understanding America and specifically understanding New York and why one of the reasons why American cities are the way they are. But I wish he had undertaken this effort about George H.W. Bush. Because, okay, comparing him to Trump, comparing one-term presidents, at the end of the day, all Trump has done his entire life and all he did in the presidency was ride a wave. And then just do the bare minimum once he got in there. H.W. created the wave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His entire life, he's always been everywhere. We aren't going to give you any definitive theories of what we 100% think happened. You should go back to our JFK episode. You know, we have theories. But in every theory we could present with the information we have, in the same way that Robert Moses built the modern New York, George H.W. Bush did build the modern America and the modern American empire.
And then he got turfed out of office after one term because the GDP did a whoopsie for 3 months.
That's the way she goes.
After an entire life spent like playing the American political economy like a Stradivarius, eating a mile of shit and being condescended to by certified Alzheimer's patient Ronald Reagan, so that he could have a chance to finally, and cleaning up Iran-Contra for him, and then grabbing the brass ring, setting up a war to happen so that you can be like the fucking, the Charlemagne of the post-Cold War era. And then this hillbilly with a saxophone says you're not sad enough that like it costs a lot of money to buy milk now and you don't know what a cash register looks like.
Yeah. All it took was him not knowing how a checkout works with the laser scanning of the barcode.
A lifetime of service to Moloch and the deep state, and the guy who just gets in under the wire, gets in there, young upstart to take over the position as Moloch's general secretary on Earth.
Yep.
I'm just a small town pedophile from Arkansas. That's the guy. That's the way she goes, man. That's the way she goes in life.
It's the law of the road, Bubs. It's the law of the road. And then also, I mean, it should also be noted that the real culmination and fulfillment of the Bush family legacy, the two-term champion, George W. Bush, his eldest son, destroyed all of it. Just destroyed all of it. And now the Bush name is forever associated with basically incompetence, failure, and the death of the American empire, and not its golden age. This is the golden age arc of the American deep state as seen through the life of George H.W. Bush. So before we get into that, I think it bears just going through briefly here as quickly as possible the lineage of the entire Bush family in the United States of America. And Chris, our producer, was nice enough to put together this abridged version of the legacy of the Bush family in America, starting with H.W.'s great grandfather, Timothy Bush Sr., who lived from 1735 to 1815. He was a Revolutionary War militia captain. And that is about as much as is important to know about him. Then we have his great-great-great-grandfather, Timothy Bush Jr., who lived from 1776 to 1850, who was a blacksmith. His great-great-grandfather, Obadiah Bush, was a schoolmaster in Rochester, New York, an abolitionist, and in fact, vice president of the American Anti-Slavery Society, and then eventually struck out for California in the 1849 Gold Rush. Wanted to move his family out there, but died on a boat returning to the East Coast to wrap up his affairs, and was in fact buried at sea off Cape Horn in South America. Then you've got his great-grandfather, James Smith Bush, who lived from 1825 to 1889. And this is where we begin to see the outlines of what we know of and think of as the Bush dynasty.
This guy or one of his direct antecedents are the Bushes who met a man at a crossroads late at night who had a vicious dog in a completely white suit and had him sign his name in a book. This is where the deal got made for the Bushes.
And what evidence do we have of this? Of course, James Smith Bush was the first Bush to attend Yale. He was in the Yale class of 1844.
That's where they have it. All the professors are demons, and they all have a deal to make with you.
They've all got a lot to offer you in this world and the next. James Bush Sr. was also an Episcopal priest. He had a stint at Grace Church in San Francisco, as well as Church of the Ascension in West Brighton, Staten Island, actually, but left in scandal after a church raffle for a gold watch was considered gambling. So he had to leave the church after a church raffle gambling scandal. Of course, then he became a Unitarian in 1888 and died suddenly while raking leaves in 1889. It's known as the Unitarian's curse, folks.
Yeah, those leaves, they'll get you.
Okay, then we got grandfather Samuel Prescott Bush, 1863 to 1948. Samuel Prescott Bush was the general manager of the Buckeye Steel Casting Company, which was a firm run by Frank Rockefeller, brother of John D. Clients of Buckeye Steel Casting included railroads controlled by E.H. Harriman, and of course the Bush and Harriman families became closely associated for 2 generations. And the Harriman clan definitely shows up in H.W.'s life, and basically everything swirling around oil, the CIA, and money.
If the Bushes are the Soprano family, and Zapata / Dresser, that's Barone Sanitation, I would call the Harrimans the Aprils.
Yes.
Definitely. Let's see. We got here. In 1908, Frank Rockefeller retires, and Samuel Prescott Bush becomes president of Buckeye Castings and basically becomes one of the top industrialists of the early 20th century. He then became chief of ordnance, small arms, and ammunitions on the War Industries Board during World War I. He served on the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland and was appointed to President Herbert Hoover's Committee for Unemployment Relief in 1931. I'm sure he did a great job at ending unemployment and the Depression, so much so that FDR became president shortly thereafter. Okay, then we get to George H.W. Bush's father, the great Prescott Sheldon Bush, who was another Yaley and another Skull and Bones member who was rumored to be among the Bonesmen who supposedly dug up and removed the skull of Apache leader Geronimo. And apparently that skull still is used in Skull and Bones. That is basically the skull in the name Skull and Bones, refers to Geronimo's skull, one of the great, fighters against the American state that has ever lived. They dug up his skull and have been jacking off into it like a fucking sock for the last few generations of
That is the
leaders of-
definition of a sore winner.
Yeah.
It's like you've got the entire continent to wreak your dark arts upon. Why do you got to do this like awful end zone dance?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, they're desecrating the mortal remains of one of the great, heroes of history. Really, one of the great figures of resistance to the American state that's ever lived. They are still desecrating his corpse to this day as part of their fruity rituals, which induct each successive new generation of the ruling class.
The most of Prescott's life is very sordid, and most of his activities at Yale are repulsive. Most of his activities later in life are even more repulsive. A thoroughly awful American who did awful things his entire life. But, little bit of fun trivia, he was the first member of the Bush family to be a member of the Yale cheerleading squad.
Yes.
A tradition followed by his son and grandson.
Yes, he was a male cheerleader at Yale. He would then go on to be a field artillery captain in the American Expeditionary Force of World War I, during which he received intelligence training and served with the French Officer Corps. So basically, that he received intelligence training from the guys in Paths of Glory that directed an artillery barrage at their own troops. That's who he was associating with during World War I. It was then sort of a sort of jack of all trades businessman. He worked for the hardware, rubber, and rubber companies, as well as merchant banks, and then also was accused of being a conspirator in the 1934 business plot.
Yes.
Familiar with this? The business plot was a conspiracy and basically a near coup that was organized by American business leaders to overthrow FDR as president, and because he was, going to turn America Bolshevik. This was, of course, the one that Medley Butler famously blew the whistle on.
Yeah, just some guys being dudes.
And then he was, of course, and then after his involvement in the business plot, he became a senator from 1952 to 1963. He was one of the 7 founding directors of the Union Banking Company, which was an investment bank that operated as a clearinghouse for the German interest of Fritz Thyssen, one of the primary early bankrollers of the Nazi movement, and of course the Thyssen-Krupp Company, known for their good or bad elevators, depending on what kind of brain damage you have.
You judge which part of his legacy is darker. It's up to you.
By the way, the Krupps in ThyssenKrupp, they're also Nazi collaborators. They were the arms manufacturer. So that's all, like, ThyssenKrupp is Nazis all the way down.
Yeah.
Check this out.
Mr. Otis never called me kike.
The Union Banking Corporation held gold on behalf of German banking interests during World War II through the Dutch bank, Bank Voorhandel. In 1942, the bank was seized under the Trading with the Enemy Act after it was discovered to be holding and trading funds on behalf of the Thyssen family. Up to 8 months after the U.S. declared war on Germany.
Oh, dip, sorry.
Well, sometimes you just don't get around to things.
Exactly. It was on the
can
list for a long time, but other stuff kept coming up.
Yeah, they didn't have email chains back then.
It's true. The workflow was dog shit.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot about the war. My bad.
Prescott Bush was also involved with the Consolidated Silesian Steel Company, or CSSC, which split ownership between Frederick Flick and Brown Brothers Harriman. There's that Harriman family again, where Bush worked under the Silesian American Corporation. Flick's plants in Poland made heavy use of concentration camp slave labor in the 30s and was later found guilty of war crimes at Nuremberg.
I have a few mistakes.
Prescott Bush, of course, actively intervened in Germany during the 30s to manage BBH interests. That was Brown Brothers Harriman, including dispatching John Foster Dulles, then of the law firm Sullivan and Cromwell, to manage liability to American directors. His evidence of ownership of SAC over the German CSSC mysteriously vanishes post-1935. However, according to journalist John Joftis, Quote, at various times, the Bush family has tried to spin it, saying they were owned by a Dutch bank, and it wasn't until Nazis took over Holland that they realized how the Nazis had controlled their apparently controlled their company, and this is why Bush supporters claim when the war was over, they got their money back. Both the American Treasury investigations and the intelligence investigations in Europe completely belie that. It's absolute horseshit. They always knew who the ultimate beneficiaries were. Prescott is also long rumored to have taken $1.5 million, that's $24.8 million in 2020 currency, a payout from his father-in-law, George Herbert Walker of BBH for this, though no conclusive paper trail has ever been found. So he took a huge cash settlement to cover up the Harriman's family's collaboration with the Nazis during World War II. So yeah, that is but just a few of the highlights of grandfather Prescott Bush's career. Which is one, that is marked by being like one of the titans of industry in America in the early 20th century, and then tried to overthrow FDR's government in a military coup, and then basically profited from concentration camp slave labor and covered and just laundered just God knows how much money for the Nazis.
And created how many jobs? Yeah, you didn't even say because you don't care.
So here's where I think we should begin our story with George H.W. Bush. And it all begins when basically Russ Baker says he would like this was the premiere magazine 50th anniversary of the Manson killings or whatever, like the 25th anniversary of the Manson killings. What was it? When did Tom O'Neill start with that? I forget.
It was 98 or 99.
So the little factoid that led him down this rabbit hole is when he discovered a mention in a report that George H.W. Bush claimed that he could not remember where he was on November 22nd, 1963, which is a astonishingly odd thing to say for any adult alive in America on that day. It is
weird. That's like the one thing. It's like 9/11. Like everyone knows exactly where they were when they heard that happened.
It's the thing that's always fucked with me about this is why couldn't he come up with a lie?
Yeah.
Like, out of all people to not lie about it, why not him?
Yeah, and he was there. He had a cover. He was there to meet a bunch of Texas oil men. Well, nothing suspicious about that.
Nothing.
I think H.W. Bush has said in other places that he was, quote, somewhere in Texas on that day, but he of course
I don't know. It might have been grassy. It might have been rocky. It was a knoll of some kind. Is all I'll stipulate.
But we should begin here with one of the first keys that unlocked this whole saga is that I forget when, but it was sometime in the 1980s. The entertainment journalist Joseph McBride, who worked for the Daily Variety at the time, came across a memo in the archives of the University of San Bernardino while researching a book about the life of Frank Capra. And he got off on a tangent in the microfiche section about the JFK assassination. McBride had been a volunteer for the Kennedy campaign, and of course, most Americans, has always remained interested in the unanswered questions about Dallas. He found this memo from J. Edgar Hoover, which was dated November 29th, 1963, that was titled Assassination of President John F. Kennedy. It reported that the day after the assassination, the Bureau gave a briefing to two men in Dallas. One, a Captain William Edwards of the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and a Mr. George Bush of the Central Intelligence Agency. It briefed these men on the activity of anti-Castro Cubans. And McBride, while reading this, thought, Mr. George Bush of the Central Intelligence Agency? Surely this wasn't the same person as the current vice president of the United States. Now, keep in mind here, Bush had been the director of the CIA for about a year and came to, during the late 70s, he was appointed director of the CIA. And he came in during a time of intense pressure on the agency related to the previous decade's worth of fuck-ups and embarrassment. There was, of course, the Kennedy assassination and the Warren Commission. And then there are all the revelations of how the CIA had used private foundations to channel funds to organizations inside the United States, such as the National Student Organization. Then, of course, there was Watergate, and then the whole fucking just the number of CIA operatives such as E. Howard Hunt that were all associated
Okay.
with it. And this whole, like the Church Commission. And H.W. Bush was chosen at the time seemingly because he had no connections to the CIA or any of its bad shit over the last decade or so, and was considered something of a lightweight. He was named by Gerald Ford, and I'm quoting from Russ Baker here, he seemed wholly unqualified for the position, especially at a time when the agency was under maximum scrutiny. He had been UN ambassador, Republican National Committee chairman, and U.S. envoy to Beijing, where both Nixon and Henry Kissinger had regarded him as a lightweight and worked around him. What experience did he have in the world of intelligence and spying? Or how would he restore public confidence in a tarnished spy agency? No one seemed to know. Or did Gerald Ford realize something that most others didn't? And that is, as this memo would seem to imply, George H.W. Bush has had a much longer association with the CIA than one that began with him being appointed director of the agency in 1976.
Yeah, the CIA also, the cover for this memo is very interesting, that they get into in Family of Secrets. The initial response to it was that there was another George Bush who worked for the CIA.
Yeah, right. The guy who worked
Right,
in like
yeah,
the
right.
fucking mailroom or something.
Yeah, he was basically, whatever Lloyd does for Ari and Entourage, that was his job at the CIA. He just got mail and probably just got yelled at by Mormons and alcoholics.
or alcoholic Mormons. Those are
Yeah.
the best CIA agents, the Mormons
Oh,
who
yeah.
drink.
The best.
It's
oh,
the
they have a
craziest
real-
CIA agents are the Mormons who drink and the Irish who don't.
Awesome.
But so the failed George Bush, this guy who didn't really have a clearance, was a clerk, like a glorified intern, who only worked nights, which is the 50s and 60s were awesome. You could get a night job at the CIA if you were white. If you were a white Protestant, people would be go ahead, work the night shift on the CIA and make a $2 an hour, which is enough to buy a 9-bedroom house in Silver Springs. But I digress. He had no clearance. Why would they send George Bush, the night desk worker, a memo about threats on President Kennedy's life?
An interagency memo, which you have to have very high clearance to be debriefed on. And it was a memo that was specifically related to the activities of anti-Castro Cubans. And this idea that that they might use the confusion or implications of a Kennedy assassination to launch like a second wave of attacks against Cuba. And they wanted to keep these guys in pocket. So yeah, like the memo was all related to the connections to anti-Castro Cubans, which is of course a huge part of the Kennedy assassination. Now, McBride followed up about this memo and contacted the White House. He never talked to George H.W. Bush directly, but did talk to Stephen Hart, who was a member of the administration and I think part of the national security team, who responded to him by quoting Bush directly, who says, quote, "I was in Houston, Texas at the time and involved in an independent oil drilling business, and I was running for Senate in late 1963. I don't have any idea of what he was talking about. Must be another George Bush," is how it concluded. Now, and then McBride went on to publish a piece about this memo in The Nation. And after that piece came out, and no one made much of a deal of it, it was, barely noticed. But following up on that, the CIA told him, and in response to this article, that it was indeed another George Bush, the one that Felix referred to, a man named George William Bush, who that they was, on their payroll at the time, but now apparently the CIA, one of the most powerful government agencies in the world with billions of dollars at their disposal, could not find George William Bush. However, Joseph McBride did track him down. And in 1988, he was working as a claims representative for the Social Security Administration. And as Felix laid out earlier, he explained that he had been worked only briefly at the CIA as a probationary civil servant and only in Langley, Virginia. He was in the CIA headquarters in November 1963 and never in his career received any briefings and certainly not any interagency briefings during his career. Now, if we jump ahead in time now to 2006, there is another declassified document that comes to light. This one dates to 1975, right before George H.W. Bush became CIA director, that flatly states that the man soon to be in charge of the agency had a relationship with the agency that dates back all the way into 1953. It says here, quote, he became aware of this project through Mr. Thomas J. Devine, a former CIA staff employee and later oil wildcatting associate of Mr. Bush. Their joint activities culminated in the establishment of Zapata Oil in 1953, which they eventually sold. After the sale of Zapata Oil, Mr. Bush went into politics, and Mr. Devine became a member of the investment firm Train, Cabot, and Associates, New York. They attached a memorandum describes the close relationship between Messrs. Devine and Bush in 1967 to 1968, which, according to Mr. Allen, continued while Mr. Bush was our ambassador to the United Nations. Now, keep in mind here, so this figure Thomas Devine, who was the guy who founded Zapata Petroleum, Zapata Oil, and Zapata Offshore with Mr. Bush, with George H.W. Bush when he broke into the oil industry in Texas, was a CIA agent. However, Thomas Devine resigned from the agency at the age of 27, which is highly unusual considering all the training he would have had all the training, time, and money that would have been invested in someone like Thomas Devine being part of the agency. However, it's not so strange when you consider the CIA has a long history of people, quote unquote, resigning to go on to work in the private sector. And of course, Zapata Petroleum was established in 1953. So here we get into Zapata Oil and the entire oil business, which is, of course, from its inception in America, always been joined at the hip with like the sort of national security state, the deep state, even before those were a thing. Long before the OSS existed or the CIA existed, basically oil companies and the attorneys at the law firms that represented them basically were well versed in sort of proto-espionage. And indeed, many of the early recruits to the OSS, which would then become the CIA, were from the oil industry precisely because they had experience with international spying on competitors and industrial espionage. H.W. and Devine found Zapata Oil in 1953, and it basically becomes the perfect cover for both international travel and the recruitment of assets and operatives for the CIA. But however, H.W.'s history with intelligence goes back to even before his World War I experience. And, that is when he joined the Navy at 18 in 1942. And he, in Norfolk, Virginia, received training as both a torpedo pilot, but also as an aerial photographer as part of something called Operation Snapshot, which was a highly secret, it was directed at the Japanese, but it was like using spy planes and what would become the same technology of like the U-2 spy planes. This was a very, very early version of using intelligence gathering through aerial photography. Operation Snapshot was so secret that you could be court-martialed for even saying the name Operation Snapshot while it was in operation. According to a book by Robert Stinnett, who was also a Navy pilot during World War II, Admiral Mark Mitscher hit the bulkhead, quote, when he saw that the Bush's team had filed a report in which they actually referred by name to this top secret project. The three people above Bush in his command were made to take razor blades to the pages of the report and remove the forbidden language. Now, according to Baker, this is the first time Bush had been stung by the disclosure of information. And he learned the lesson very well throughout the rest of his life in terms of excising information about people, places, and things that you did that were agency or sort of covert related, that you just don't talk about them, or you use PR and obfuscation to manage those facts in your biography and resume. But from there, after World War II, of course, H.W. goes to Yale, which was by then a farm team for the CIA. I mean,
that's the equivalent. We've basically replaced covert rule in our empire with just overt military rule now. Like the CIA is just another arm of JSOC. So the modern day equivalent would be like BUDS training or like the SEAL program.
Yeah, SEAL teams. It's nothing really shows American cultural degeneration more than replacing, as Will said, the Mormon alcoholics and the Irish teetotalers. Interesting characters, your hard-drinking Eagletons, Edwin P. Wilson always in his bag, all our guys.
Oh God, Frank Wisner just skitzing out at every dinner party.
They were.
They had a
some
good time.
guys.
They had
They had
They had
some
a good
dudes.
time. They had some dudes.
there was a
Sidney Gottlieb just pranking Frank Olson with the old acid in the drink.
I mean, there's a quote
So
here.
they've been replaced by SEALs. I mean, I think it was something crazy like 3 or 4 of Trump's initial cabinet appointees were former Navy SEALs.
Yeah, that zinky asshole who like was just stealing the fucking. He was just taking the toilet paper out of the bathrooms at the Department of the Interior
and created his own challenge coins for the Department of the Interior.
Yeah. Navy SEALs, they love stealing, but they're sort of the perfect. Their role at the forefront of the American empire now, as the public face of it, it reminds me of what Patrick Wyman said about how the late stage of empire always signals the death of the country because the frontier comes home.
Yes.
The Navy SEAL is the ideal frontiersman because he has no affections, is a completely heartless killer.
Hard, desolate, the killer, like D.H. Lawrence said. Yeah.
Yeah. But almost, actually not even just like heartless. They have like a lust for killing.
Yeah.
I love it.
That is like unmatched by even some of their predecessors. And their main thing is their aesthetic, their frontier aesthetic, the long beards, the fucking cool knives,
The Kifa.
The tactical clothing that we resell to suburban fatzos. And it is, I mean, it was awful when the CIA ran things. It was awful when, we ran things through just a battery of NATO bureaucracy. It was awful when it was, the free trade troika under Clinton. But this really fucking sucks. This really sucks dick. I hate this.
Yeah.
I hate the Navy SEALs.
Some asshole. It's like, look, James Angleton would like sit in the dark drinking and staring at a wall. And you guys are like doing fucking TikToks where you're lip syncing while shooting watermelons with BLM written on them.
Yeah.
So you can sell fucking coffee to rubes.
Yeah.
Edwin, at least they had bigger imaginations back then. Wilson made what, like 400 million selling shit to Libya?
Yeah.
It's like these fucking hicks are just doing doing Anavar ass injection parties and then doing somersaults to commemorate people who died in an experimental helicopter crash.
Felix. I was in my reading for this. I didn't write it down. I forget who said it, but there was a quote from one of these early CIA guys from like a memoir or a statement that someone reported about him about those years, and he just said, "Man, the fun we had." And I think that sums it up. These were like, sort of like preppy college boys who were, they were given the world to run, and like they did it through, just imbibing quarts of scotch, wife swapping, and wearing smart ties and tweed jackets and shit.
Riding Kim Philby around your solarium like a dog.
You know what?
And then today it's the Black Rifle Coffee guys.
Yeah.
Just yelling at you on a TikTok video, as Matt said, about like what a pussy you are for drinking Starbucks.
Yeah. It used to be all these alcoholics sitting around completely naked in a really hot office, totally wet, and reciting poetry in Greek, even though they were wasted beyond repair. And now it's like these guys, making TikToks to Aaron Lewis songs and crying. Like, it
Makes
sucks,
me sick
man.
how far we done fell.
Yeah.
But just to return to Yale and like the era of George H.W. Bush's graduating class, I don't know if it was his graduating class or the one before it, but like just to give you like an idea of what a farm team it was for the CIA, 35 men from one of the graduating classes would go on to work for the agency. 35 guys went to the same fucking place, and that's just of we know of. And here comes HW, his father Prescott. He's got Yale fucking pedigree going back 2 generations. He already has experience in Navy intelligence under his belt because of World War II. And of course he joins Skull and Bones at Yale.
Oh,
just like
where
his father.
He jacks off in a coffin next to Geronimo's skull.
Just
a real
like
thing
his
that he
father.
really did. Not a joke.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He was also, as a bonesman, he was nicknamed Mammon. And Mammon was a nickname that every class had, and it was for the horniest guy in the class. So one thing we know about Poppy is that he was laying pipe of some kind or another.
Well, if I can get into phrenology a little bit, Poppy does have the skull and build of a guy with a dick that's too wide for his body.
But you know,
I have a good friend who had about Poppy's build, and he was just like, we lived in an attic together when we lived in St. Paul, Minnesota. We were both very broke, and he would just walk around naked, and it was just like 9 inches flat. It was the most insane thing I've ever seen, and that's what I think Poppy was like. Probably
he was hanging dong.
Well, here's the thing about Skull and Bones, right? It's that it is the oldest secret society of the American Ivies, but what does it really do, right? On the surface, it is like Bohemian Grove, this kind of like fruity theater kid thing, where it's like these preppies have their little dinner clubs, and they dress in costumes, and they sing songs, and they have these like weird rituals, like you said, where you jack off in a coffin with Geronimo's fucking skull, and that you do like you have to confess all of your deepest secrets in like a group of men who are like nude from the waist up or from the waist down. I forget how the ritual goes, but it's all this kind of like like I said, like Bohemian Grove. It's a lot of this theater kid shit. Yeah. That is just like it has like a tinge of the
for these rich fancy Fauntleroy.
It has a tinge of the sinister, but when you really get down to it, it's pretty stupid. But here's the thing: what is it really all about? Like these secret societies and their secret rituals and their secret code words and their secret fucking handshakes and all that bullshit. What is it really all about? It's about proving that you can keep secrets.
Mm-hmm.
That's
exactly
how. That's what it. That is its function, and that is why Skull and Bones and Yale and Princeton and places like that minted this entire generation of like business, intelligence, news, and military leaders who. Again, it's not a conspiracy. All of these people were friends. All of these people went to the same schools. All their dads were friends. All these people were literally in the same secret societies with each other.
Going back to criticisms of Family of Secrets, yes, I do think there is probably some journalistic malpractice in the book. But in the end, if you intend to make a full accounting of this family, and specifically of HW, you have to work on innuendos and circumstantial evidence because so much of this is undocumented. You only see the result because so much of this is a result of these people first meeting each other when they were 18 and fucking jerking off in a coffin. All of this is said without record, without anyone writing it down, without anyone seeing it, and then it just happens.
Yeah,
that is what you have to work with.
Yeah, and Felix, to this point, it's like you're also left with only innuendo because these people are very, very adept at making sure that is all that you have to go off of based on their fucking resume and life story. As per the example about Operation Snapshot and him getting reamed out for just even saying the word in an official memo. This is why. George H.W. Bush in his memoirs has nothing about Dallas 1963. It has nothing about where he was or what he was doing or any recollection of the assassination itself or mention of it. In fact, the only sources we have to go off that are Barbara Bush's book, where she lets slide some cover for what they were up to or what they were doing in Dallas and Houston at the time.
Yeah, it's all things that if you talk about them, it's just designed to make you sound like a crank. But it's like he can't say what he was doing because whether these are all possibilities that he did nothing, that he had a tattoo, that he hid the real killer's gun, that he personally did it, which I think is the most ridiculous.
That's the least incredible one.
Yeah, right. But no matter which one it is, if he says anything, you can start pulling at the yarn and unravel some of it. And the point is to never unravel any of it. To even the thing that looks off, that is off. Things like, the boats in the Bay of Pigs assassinations being codenamed Houston and Barbara. Things like that to make you sound like an asshole when you just point to the fringes of them that we all know are there. We all know it's there. We all know there's something there. But there's not enough written down for you to definitively say, yeah, he fucking killed JFK.
Yeah.
It's funny to say. I like saying it. But, yeah.
Well,
yeah,
I mean,
because
look,
these people all communicate by like wasp telepathy, just a
Yes.
collection of hand gestures and winks and translucent vein in the temple throbbing.
Yeah. HW is so interesting to me, and his life is so interesting to me, especially in the wake of Donald Trump. I think this is the perfect time to record this and look into this, because we're going to talk about this in part 2, HW the politician. But did you guys ever watch that 60 Minutes interview with HW in 1980 I posted?
no, I haven't.
It's very interesting because the questions they ask him are, hey, are you too nice to be the president?
Yep. Are you a wimp? What's with the wimp factor?
And the whole wimp thing it ended up being kind of his undoing, but
That was
it
the co- that was
by
on the
his
cover of
own
Newsweek,
design,
right?
Yeah,
President?
it was by his own design. It's like, okay, my choices are people see me as the heartless killer who snuffed out American Camelot and a lifelong spook and God knows what else. Or I'm like a bit of a fuddy-duddy.
Yeah. Oh,
What
yeah.
do I want? What do I
don't like
want?
Brussels sprouts.
Yeah. And I think it's so interesting in the wake of Trump, who is a fucking pussy, but goes the opposite direction. Like, everyone goes the opposite direction of HW now, where they are these evil fucking people, but also wusses. Also never would have been able to, fly naval combat missions in the Pacific in the 40s, or pull the trigger on an American president. They make a big showing with, Black Rifle Coffee Company, open carrying in Starbucks, when really they're as pig-bellied and resentful and bitter and queenish as Trump is.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything degenerates over time.
Indeed.
Before I get into Poppy's career after college, Matt, what was the thing about the circumstances surrounding the medal he received for valor during World War II, where like he bailed out of his plane before his crew could?
Yeah, that's the deal. Is that he was a bomber pilot, and the plane got shot down, and there was controversy for years that he basically let the guys go down. That he got out at just like, see you guys later.
And he was their officer, right? Like he was the commanding officer, and he was first out of the door, right?
First out the door, yes.
Hope you guys got an inner tube.
Yeah. He almost
and then famously at the age of 90, he went skydiving as in sort of a reenactment of having to bail out of his plane after it being blown up.
Yeah.
If I Did It by O.J. Simpson.
All right, so let's move on to his post collegiate life. Once he graduated Yale, Poppy, aka HW, was immediately hired by a company called Dresser Industries, the SR Dresser Manufacturing Company. It was the SR Dresser Manufacturing Company was a small but largely unexceptional firm, but that found eager buyers in Prescott Bush's Yale friends, Roland and W. Averill Harriman, the sons of the railroad tycoon E.H. Harriman, a.k.a. the April family. And that they had recently set up a merchant bank to assist wealthy families in such endeavors. Dresser basically made its money because it held the patents on two very valuable pieces of oil extraction technology. And their whole business model was not based on the idea that they would own or extract the oil themselves, but they would have the copyright on the technology that you would need to extract the oil, and that they would have a monopoly.
You don't get rich in the gold rush by getting gold. You get it by selling shovels. But I have a little section to read on Dresser. It involves a little Uncle Magic.
Hell yes.
Uncle Neil, baby. Hiring decisions by the bonesmen at the Harriman firm were presented as jolly, distinctly informed, with club and family being prime qualifications. The one Harriman partner, Knight Woolley, a Yale and Bones Confrere
Knight Woolley, no.
of Prescott Bush's, tells it Malin simply wandered into their offices at the precise moment they were deciding who would run the newly acquired Dresser. Malin was flush from a recent 6-month mountaineering holiday with the help.
God damn.
When he stopped in for a visit, Roland Harriman turned and pointed at Malin, then uttered the words, "Dresser! Dresser!" Upon which Malin was escorted into the office of Prescott's father-in-law, George Herbert Walker, then president of Harriman and Company, for a pro forma job interview. Walker promptly installed Malin as president.
Yeah, Neil Malin, who was known to HW as Uncle Neil, hired him in 1948, and after Prescott installed Neil Malin at the helm of Dresser Industries. And as Felix said, Malin's primary credential was that he was, quote, one of them. He was a Yaley
Uncle Magic
and a Scully.
No, yeah, that is. I want everyone to we've got some people in the professional class who listen. You know, there's so much you probably have to go through for your job, right? Like you probably have to go through 10 rounds of interviews, 2 stages of interviews. You had to, like, I don't know, go hitchhiking with your supervisor to prove that you can solve problems. I don't know what you have to do. I haven't worked an actual job in like 10 years. But imagine if you could just go on vacation for 6 months just because, and then you wander in to visit your dumbass friends and they're like, "Hey, do you want to make like $1 million a year?" You're like, "Yeah, I guess." Cool life.
Now,
yeah, it really did rule.
Now, here's the deal, though. I mean, like, this is all around like the American oil industry, which is, of course, a very strategic business for, quote, national security. You need oil to have a Navy, Army, and Air Force, and American oil had driven the American war machine during World War II, and like basically is one of the reasons America was able to win in World War II, is its productive capacity and like its endless supply of oil. However, by the end of World War II, America had basically, we still had plenty of petroleum, but we had exhausted like most of the oil fields in America. We had involved not tapping it out completely, but like it involved a huge expenditure of America's own oil resources. And so much so that Roosevelt's Secretary of the Interior and later his petroleum administrator for the war warned in 1943 that, quote, if there should be a World War III, it would have to be fought with someone else's petroleum because the United States wouldn't have it. Who does have the petroleum? Saudi Arabia. And this, of course, goes into the whole deal that FDR made with the Saudis. The Bitter Lake Adam Curtis documentary goes into all of this after World War II, which was, that set in place like the dominant American foreign policy towards the Middle East for basically from then up until now, which is that we provide cover to let the Saudis do basically whatever they want in exchange for that we are the primary buyers for the Saudi crude reserves, like Saudi crude, like that we would have untrammeled access to Saudi crude in perpetuity, and it would be on it would be a deal on our terms, but like basically we would always provide cover for like the Saudi royal family, and they could do whatever they want, i.e., proselytize fundamentalist Islam to the rest of the fucking Muslim world.
Yeah, the different forms this deal is taken on is very interesting, and I hope one day someone writes a book just about the military hardware purchases. I mean, John Dolan, the war nerd, has written very extensively about how Saudis, we get a little bit of a rebate for our weapon sales because the Saudis will buy highly expensive state-of-the-art American military technology with the fundamental understanding that the Saudi military alone could not hold it in an uprising. That would have to be the Americans. It's an insurance policy. It's an expensive insurance policy. Hey, you don't want this falling into the hands of Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula or ISIS, do you? Okay, well, you're always going to be at the ready. One of the more formative events for the modern relationship between the West and the Saudis' understanding of their own kingdom was in the 70s when an uprising took the Grand Mosque in Mecca, and Saudi troops were completely unable to retake it just from a ragtag group of assholes who thought their cousin was the Mahdi.
They had to use French mercenaries, right?
They had to use former French GIGN commandos. There is an urban legend that because non-Muslims cannot enter the Grand Mosque, that they forced the French to convert to Islam before going, and then they went back being Catholics after. But that's never been confirmed. I like to believe it. It's funny, but I don't know that that happened. But there was also sort of a deal where Saudis were buying unusually high volumes of T-bills during times of extensive American deficit spending. So there are, again, this is one of those things that isn't, no one's going to outright say it. Like no one who works at DOD or state is going to go, hey, they're buying our they're buying a bunch of fucking missiles that they have no intention of using and cannot defend. Just so it's an insurance policy, but hey, we're making out ahead. Or hey, they're buying our T-bills because we buy their oil. It's a rebate deal that we have.
Yeah.
But it's something. You notice something's going on.
And I mean, like just to bring it into the present moment, for example, I mean, like if you've ever wondered why America would back to the hilt Saudi Arabia's genocidal war against Yemen over the Obama, Trump, and now potentially Biden administrations, I mean, I think it all goes back to essentially this deal that was made after World War II, where like in order for America to be a global military hegemon and to stand as a bulwark against communism and prosecute the Cold War, our empire needed unfettered access to Saudi oil. And that continues to this day. And that's why they can do things like carry out the worst ongoing war crime in the world with the full cooperation of the U.S. military and government. So back to Dresser here. Dresser Industries was also known for providing covers for CIA agents and assets. And H.W. goes to work for Dresser in 1948, but things get interesting when the Cold War really heats up in 1950, when North Korea invades the South. Now, this is important because it caught the U.S. intelligence community completely off guard, and heads had to roll because it was a huge embarrassment for them. So who steps in? Well, a man named Allen Dulles. We've already heard about his brother, John Foster, and his relationship to this story, but Allen Dulles becomes the deputy director of clandestine activities. And wouldn't you know it, he just happens to have had a decades-long relationship with the Bush family prior to that. Even as far back as World War I, when Dulles' uncle was serving as Secretary of State, Prescott's father, Samuel Bush, oversaw small arms manufacturing for the War Industries Board, and a young Allen Dulles played a crucial role in the fledgling intelligence services operations in Europe. Later, the families interacted regularly as the Bush clan plied their trade in investment banking and the Dulleses in the law. So, basically, the Bushes were the bankers and the Dulleses were the lawyers. And those two were their relationship united those two sectors of American power, and they were the ones who knew how to get things done. They were the ones they controlled the money, and they had the keys to all the doors through banking and the law. So Dulles, at the same time as Dulles is taking over all clandestine operations for the U.S. intelligence state and national security state, Dresser Industries relocates to Dallas, which was rapidly becoming the center of both the defense industry, but also new oil capital. This was this was the West Texas oil boom. It was minting these new titans of industry. And of course, Neil Mallon was at the center of all of it, bringing together sort of these politically conservative, the elites of Dallas society, together with what was then a nonprofit group called the Council on World Affairs. And Mallon had been active in the Cleveland branch of that. It had been started in 1918. Basically, it was a localized equivalent of the Rockefeller-backed Council on Foreign Relations, the presidency of which Allen Dulles had just resigned to take his post at the CIA. So in September 1951, there was an organizing meeting at Mallon's home, which featured a group of people in that meeting, which included Fred Florence, who was the founder of the Republic National Bank, whose Dallas office tower was a covert repository for CIA-connected ventures. There was a guy named T.E. Braniff, who was a pioneer of the airline industry and a member of the Knights of Malta. Then there was Fred Wooten, who was an official at the First National Bank of Dallas, which would then later go on to employ H.W. Bush in the years between his tenure as CIA director and vice president. And then a guy named Colonel Robert G. Story, who was later named as a liaison between Texas law enforcement and the Warren Commission investigating the assassination of President Kennedy. This group backs Eisenhower for president, and George H.W. Bush is made Midland County chairman on the Eisen-Nixon-Howard campaigns in both 1952 and 1956. So young George H.W. Bush finds himself sitting at the nexus of basically the Eastern establishment, the incoming administration, and this huge new wealth created by in West Texas oil. Ike becomes president, and the Dulles brothers cement their control over all of U.S. foreign policy. John Foster Dulles becomes Ike's Secretary of State, and Allen Dulles becomes head of the CIA. And guess what? Ike's Treasury Secretary, Robert B. Anderson, was a longtime member of the Dresser Industries Board of Directors. Now, here's the thing. Eisenhower was a general. He was the top general of American forces in the European theater for World War II. I mean, Operation Overlord, D-Day, that was all Eisenhower. And the thing is about generals is that they like delegating authority. He did not want to be involved in the day-to-day grind of politics. So he was happy to sort of farm out a lot of the sort of functions of state to guys like the Dulles brothers. And it's sort of like the daily tasks of being president were kind of boring to him, and like it was not seen as like his role as an executive to oversee every aspect of them. So what did they do with this authority being delegated to them? Guatemala and Iran. And of course, it's Mellon's Council of World Affairs that was involved in a lot of this. Basically, at the beginning of his administration, they sent 15 members on a 3-month world tour for meetings with what the group characterized as, quote, responsible political and business leaders. After the group returned, Dulles came to visit with the Dallas Council chapter, and at the same time, the CIA was in the process of creating plausible deniability for what would eventually become its efforts to topple unfriendly regimes like Arbenz in Guatemala and Mossadegh in Iran. Here's the problem, though. The CIA's charter explicitly prohibits any kind of domestic covert operations. So the way around that is you have to create an entire environment, like an entire ecosystem of middlemen to support rebels in countries that are targeted for regime change. And during the early days of Dresser in Dallas, and then eventually Zapata Petroleum, Dulles was beginning to experiment with running these off-the-books operations. And companies like Dresser and then Zapata Petroleum were like the perfect covers to not just run off-the-books operations, but to fund them as well. Zapata Petroleum is founded in 1953 with investment money from his uncle Herbie Bush, also Yale Skull and Bones class of 1927. And just a quick note here about Uncle Herbie. He was instrumental in bringing others, including Eugene Meyer, a Yale graduate and owner of the Washington Post. Meyer was one of a number of media titans who were friends with Prescott, and fellow Skull and Bones member Henry Luce, founder of Time Magazine, and William Paley, who was head of CBS at the time. So, like I said here, like this is bringing together like all these people went to the same schools and were part of the same secret society in it, and then would go on to be the heads of basically banking, like the legal profession, the media, and the intelligence community. And
Staten Island, Brooklyn, Manhattan, the Bronx.
So, Felix, you want to talk about Zapata Offshore and how that worked?
Zapata Offshore, also pending on audience interesting, hats coming soon. I've been informed I cannot be sued by the Bush crime family or Zapata's successor corporations for my Zapata oil hats that I have made for my friends and family. So we'll see, but no, I think I may sell those soon. But Zapata offshoring, it was an interesting group of guys. It was founded in conjunction, George H.W. and Thomas Devine, who we had mentioned earlier as the 27-year-old CIA wonderkind who had retired.
Yeah, he got all the intelligence. He just did it very quickly.
Yeah, some guys are just like, they just breeze through it, right?
Yeah.
Zapata offshoring was formed as a subsidiary of Zapata Oil. George H.W. was the president of Zapata Offshoring.
Well, I mean, okay, so like offshore drilling was a relatively it was a newer technology, and Zapata Offshore had a drilling rig called Scorpion that was they were able to move from the Gulf of Mexico to Cay Sal Bank, which was a very remote island in the Bahamas that was crucially 54 miles north of Cuba. And the Cay Sal Island had also recently been leased to Howard Hughes, who had his own longstanding CIA ties, as well as what was known as his own private CIA. And these offshore platforms, basically, here's how they work. George Bush would be given a list of the names of Cuban oil workers who wanted jobs. And wouldn't you know it, all of those Cubans who got placed in jobs working for Zapata Offshore were connected to Operation Mongoose, which is the CIA program to overthrow Castro. Basically, the oil platforms were the perfect training. They were like, they gave them jobs, covers, but also basically were like training camps for these Cubans to do raids on the Cuban homeland during, right after Castro had come to power.
Operation Mongoose.
The other thing that Zapata did, and it was in the perfect business for this, like if you run an offshoring business, you could obscure a lot of like transportation of goods, transportation of arms, transportation of people. It can look like anything.
Logistics.
Offshoring buildings. Yeah. They were a purchasing agent for the CIA, oftentimes. That it makes me think of, the boats in Bay of Pigs being named Barbara and Houston. Yeah. Again, like fucking weird coincidence, right?
The thing is, like, the connection to Operation Mongoose here takes us back to that original J. Edgar Hoover memo that mentions a Mr. George Bush for the Central Intelligence Institute. What was that memo about? It was briefing them, the DIA and the CIA, on the FBI's concerns about these anti-Castro Cubans and like the chance that they may, I don't know, go off books again and do something crazy, like, I don't know, kill the president of the United States. And like, that's the thing. It was like, this is all connected to these off the books operations in the Caribbean and Cuba in particular. Now, of course, Fidel takes power in the Cuban Revolution in 1959. And what does he do? He declares himself a communist not long after that. But even before that, he begins expropriating the property of several large American firms, specifically agricultural and mineral. And like, this gets into the idea of like the sort of psychology of a lot of these guys too. Because like when we talk about national security, what does that really mean? And for these guys, it means, particularly anything in the Western Hemisphere, is ours. If you have a country that has resources or anything that we want or need, it's ours. It is America's. We control it, not you. And anything like what Castro did, they take it, like these guys, they take it as a personal insult to them. It's like there's an emotional, psychological connection here to revolutions like Castro or governments like Arbenz or Mossadegh in Iran that attempt to use the natural resources of their own countries for their own benefit, that nationalize them or run them in the way that America would if we had those companies, for the benefit of their own people and their own government. That's why they have to go. And like these guys in the early CIA, the people who like these skull and bonesy guys who fucking did all of these assassinations and coups, there is an emotional fucking part to this where they really regard it as kind of like an insult to them personally. Like an attack, not just on America, but on like their very conception of them, of themselves, their own sort of self-identity. The idea that these countries could take what is rightfully ours from us just because it happens to be within their borders.
It all goes back to jerking off in Geronimo's skull. It's the same act. It's the same thought behind it. It is the wasp as the rightful inheritor of the earth
Yep.
and all its corners.
The earth tells me there is no sin.
And it's just like I just feel like what you're saying earlier about them being basically a paymaster for the CIA. This is quoting here from John Sherwood, who was chief of the CIA's anti-Castro operations in the early 60s, has said, quote, Bush's company was used as a conduit for these funds under the guise of oil business contracts. The major breakthrough was when we were able to, through Bush, to place people in Pemex, the big Mexican national oil corporation. And of course, Zapata's operations were just a pure continuation of the model created by Dresser Industries. It was like a one-to-one thing. They were basically, I mean, that's the thing. They're basically the same company. They're doing the same thing. It's just a different name. And in Zapata, George Bush was running it rather than working for it. Just quoting here, it says here, like they were innovative in borrowing from the in-house history of Dresser, which he was basically one of the first companies to do this bold move of this innovative tax strategy that involved creating a separate company in the country, the Principality of Liechtenstein. The benefit here was that no American taxes had to be paid on international earnings until the money was returned to the United States, if it was returned to the United States at all. And basically, like the funds became such that they were not repatriated or they were out of sight of federal authorities, and basically there was no effective way of knowing where that money went or for what purposes. And Zapata, as like the umbrella corporation, which just consisted of a number of foreign corporations that were incorporated in each country where these drilling rigs operated. And it was basically created by the tax department at Arthur Andersen and the tax lawyers at Baker and Botts. Arthur Andersen, another longtime player in American evil. I mean, even going up to Enron in the fucking late 90s. I mean, like these are the accounting firms that create ways for American firms to not just hide profits from taxation, but to create these vast flows of capital that are essentially exist in a black box and are unknown to anyone but the people involved. And lo and behold, who's involved? Yeah, people are getting rich off of it, but it's really just, it's all the United States government and intelligence communities. Like that's what these corporations are at a certain level. They're allowed to make money, and like I said, a lot of people get rich off of them, but they are still basically fronts, especially in the oil business, for the CIA and what they want to do, which is fund illegal.
one escapes justice.
Nikola Tesla, one of the main tidal wave like proper bounces back. It's like these boats were like, yeah, we missed the tidal wave, but actually no, it's coming back for you guys. My bad. I also love how impatient this traffic is over there. It's like each time the wave sort of carries on going like that direction, the traffic's like, oh, a little bit more room, everyone move forward, and then some get swept away, and these guys are like, can't be having any space. Right, anyway, back to our Tesla valve. What we're comparing this time is how this curve works at the bottom compared to the top that has no curve. How is that gonna work? It's spinning around. And look, you can see it's deflected. It's coming back, which means two waves are sort of meeting in the middle. And I think because this had more force. Yeah, look, the water's heading back out. Oh, fair play, game. Is it working how I wanted it to? Maybe. Like, compared to the top one, you can see there's way more flow coming out this side. Right, so that's pretty much done. I want to try and get rid of these bits. Because basically you can see this slopey bit is a bit narrower, so if I just trim up to the flood walls, I think that'll be a fairer test as well. So now our water coming up here, it should work a bit better. Now a little bit more theory as well.
Here we go again.
Because you might be wondering, you may have seen it in the simulation as well. You might be thinking, Matt, surely the water coming along here, as it heads along this way, surely it will just go down this one, and that's where we want the water to come out. Well, yes, it would, but if you remember, the wider the water, the slower it is. And you'll notice this mainstream is a lot wider than these narrow ones. So if you think about the water, as it's going along here, it's going at a set speed. As it heads down there, because it's narrower, it will be
Oops, got what secretly turns you on. Now let's see what it is. Really? Really? That's what... Oops, got what secretly turns you on.
Did you know that each piano key actually has 3 strings, all tuned to the same note? Pretty cool, right? It's really not. It's just a missed opportunity. Because if we retune them so we instead have 3 different notes... If this works, it's going to sound fake. I just played a full chord with 1 finger. Let's put it in context. Regular melody. Regular 1-key note. And this note. Look, this is crazy. That's insane. That's 1 finger. Plays a full chord. But I'm not done yet because I have 4 fingers left on this hand, so I could play 5 chords at once. Well, let me know your ideas. Did you...
You can tell where someone is from in Europe by asking them to pronounce one word. Germans will often add an H in between words that start with an S and a T, so they might say street, like Stiepel. Spanish has no problem with that S and T sound, but they never begin a word with it, so they might add a vowel to the beginning, so it's like S street. Meanwhile, Italians take an issue with the other end of the word because they pretty much never end a word on a consonant, so this would become stritza. Then there's how the Greek S is a bit more of a hiss, so you might hear a Greek saying streets. And Russians will often add a Y glide. That might not be super noticeable in streets, but it definitely would be if it was a little street. I'd be curious if there are any other giveaways for like Swedish, Dutch, but there was one guy who used to have a national radio program where people would call in, and based on how they pronounced a series of like 15 words, he could identify where you were born down to like the county, if not the street. You can tell where someone
Being buried in concrete is sort of like jumping in a vat of bleach.
So the pH of concrete can get up to 12 or 13. The pH of this is 11.8. And that's incredibly basic, which means if it's on your skin, if it's on your body, it can be dissolving your skin and cells. And that's why I'm actually wearing a dry suit and some latex gloves. I'm like trying to push myself down into it, but it's like, it pushes me up. Like I'm pushing down into the concrete, but it's like, well, I'm getting pushed out of this thing. We were worried about getting me out, but like I can't stay in. I'm gonna try to jump in. Here we go. That's it. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. That's great. Oh. That feels so good.
Being buried in concrete is...
How fast did you make the internet? 1.2 million times faster. So like, how many gigabits per second would that be? 301 million gigabits per second. Wait, that would download a game that's a terabyte big in less than a second? Yes, yes it would. Whoa, how did you do it? Essentially, the fiber optic cables that we use to beam internet all over the world had a whole bunch of space that no one knew how to use. And you figured out how to use it, huh? Precisely, and the great part about this discovery is that it uses existing infrastructure, which means we won't need to replace anything in order to gain these speeds. Is there such thing as a Nobel Prize for people who make our lives better? Because I think this guy's gonna deserve one. How fast did you make the internet? 1.2 million times faster. So like, how many gigabits per second would that be? 301 million gigabits per second. Wait, that would download a game that's a terabyte big in less than a second? Yes, yes it would. Whoa, how did you do it? Essentially, the fiber optic cables that we use to beam internet...
Fun fact, every astronaut who travels to the International Space Station must be able to speak Russian fluently. And British astronaut Tim Peake said, the most difficult part of training to become an astronaut was learning to speak Russian. The International Space Station is a joint venture between 5 different space agencies. The US, Russia, Japan, Europe, and...
4 meanest zodiac signs. Astrology has long fascinated humanity, offering insights into our personalities, behaviors, and relationships. While each zodiac sign has its own distinct characteristics, some are renowned for their assertiveness, intensity, and at times their mean streak. Aries. Aries individuals are known for their boldness and competitive nature. While their fiery energy can be exhilarating, it can also tip into aggressiveness and impatience, earning them a reputation for being one of the meanest zodiac signs. Taurus. Next up, we have Taurus. Known for their unwavering determination and loyalty, Taurus individuals can also be notoriously stubborn and uncompromising. When pushed too far, they can unleash their wrath with a force that rivals even the fieriest of Aries. Scorpio. The enigmatic scorpion of the zodiac takes the 3rd spot on our list. With their magnetic allure and intense passion, Scorpios can be both captivating and intimidating. However, their penchant for 4 meanest zodiac signs. Astrology.
Get a long thin magnet and stick it to a screwdriver and then spin the screwdriver around like that. The magnets will climb up the screwdriver. If you can actually get it to work, there we go. And now you might think that's because I'm kind of sweeping like that and so it's flinging outwards. But look, it'll do it if I hold it upside down as well. But even if I put angle the thing that way. The magnet sticks to the screwdriver and rolls like that, and then it slips, and then it sticks, and then it slips like that. So think about that, when it rolls like that, the contact points are a line from here to down here, right? But because of the weight of this thing being pulled down, the force of the contact is greater here than it is up here. So when it does slip, it actually rolls around that contact point, and so it rolls up. Get a long thin magnet.
If you shave your eyebrow, some people think that they'll never grow back. Now, this isn't entirely accurate. Your eyebrows probably will grow back, but there is a little bit of truth to this myth. You see, a lot of people pluck or wax their brows, which can actually damage the hair follicle. And when that happens, the hair growth slows down or stops altogether. So while your eyebrows can grow back, overplucking might mean they won't return quite the same way. If you shave...
This is one of the worst and best feelings at the same time. You're met with a painful reality when you open up your beehive and see a heap of messy comb in a place it shouldn't be, because deep down you know that you're going to have to destroy the hard work of all your bees. It likely took my hive about 2 weeks to draw out this comb, and unfortunately all that effort will be for nothing. But when life gives you lemons as a beekeeper, at least you can make some honey lemonade. This is one of the worst and best feelings at the same time. You're met with a painful reality when you open up your beehive and see a heap of messy comb in a place it shouldn't be, because deep down you know that you're going to have to destroy the hard work of all your bees.
Pay close attention, as today I will share with you 5 things to avoid during the solar eclipse on April.
There's no way Italy is a real.
This is why real-time cutscenes are superior.
Just like Walt said. Keep him out of this cloud! He can't get into the tunnel! Stay on our toes.
The most points that can be scored in a game of Scrabble in a single move is unknown, but the highest so far discovered was found by Dan Wood in 2008. It requires an unlikely scenario in which you have these 7 letters, the board looks like this, and it's your turn. First, you take your O and turn pacifying into opacifying. You take your X to change is into Zis, which means more than one Zi. You make requalified pre-qualified. Rainwashing becomes brainwashing. Wakeners becomes awakeners. One time becomes zone time. And finally, with your E, jaculating becomes ejaculating. You made those 7 words by vertically playing oxyphenbutazone, a word that, like all the words on this board, are allowed in tournament play by the North American Scrabble Players Association. In that one move, you scored 1,780 points. The most points that can be scored in a game.
Common mistakes people make negotiating purchase of a business. Number 1, if it's not in writing, it doesn't count. Period. End of story. Solve for getting it inked. And you need an exclusivity agreement so that the seller can't shop his or her company to other prospective buyers. That's huge. And then secondly, if you're noticing that the seller is looking for an overinflated number, if they don't meet you quickly on terms that are near where you want to be, then cut the rope and move on to a different deal. Common mistakes people make negotiating purchase of a business. Number 1, if it's not.
Why do ultra-high voltage power grid worker use blowtorch to check their surrounding? You see, in high voltage converter station, regular check are required. If there is high voltage leakage, this leakage will generate ion discharge in the air. So the current in the air will affect the direction of the flame. These blowtorches helps electric workers detect any leakages and malfunctions in the power grid. Why do ultra-high voltage power grid worker use blowtorch to check their surrounding? You see,
The drip rifle, World War I. During the evacuation of Gallipoli by the Allies, which started in December 1915, an ingenious invention was constructed on the battlefield by Anzac forces to deceive the Ottoman enemy into thinking a large force was still firing back at them, when in reality, the rifles were shooting without a person pulling the trigger. This invention, which was called the drip rifle, or pop-off rifle, was developed by an Australian called Lance Corporal William Scurry, who was assisted by his friend Bunty Lawrence.
Hancock's theory challenges.
They say you shouldn't put metal in a microwave. I mean, yes and no. I'm going to say don't try this at home because there can be dangers, but look.
My dad broke this glass vase, but instead of throwing the entire thing away, I wanted to repurpose it into a spearhead. The first step is to take the thick part of the glass and knock off any remaining pieces of the vase. To shape this chunk of glass and make it thinner and more like a spearhead, I'm using a deer antler to break pieces off.
Did you know that the love between Antony and Cleopatra wasn't just a whirlwind romance, but a saga of power, passion?
Before cameras were invented, this artist was paid $500 to make this sketch during a solar eclipse. Eclipses have always been important events for science. It's your one chance to see the sun's atmosphere. But up until the 1700s, scientists couldn't really predict when and where they would happen, so they didn't do a lot of expeditions to study them. But after they could track the path of totality, scientists started flocking to document the event. And since they didn't have cameras or film, they turned to sketch artists, which seems like a lot of pressure. The whole thing only lasts a few minutes, so you have to be phenomenal at capturing details rapidly. Some of the eclipse artists would blindfold themselves before the eclipse so that their eyes would be like super sensitive during totality, and they got pretty good at it. So it's interesting that sketching seems like it would be way too subjective to be useful to science, but for a while it was kind of the best we had. Before cameras were invented, this artist was paid $500 to make this.
Priestess of Lolth fails at whatever they're trying to.
If you somehow removed all of the blood vessels in your body and tied them together, you might think it would be about this long. But the human body has thousands of these tiny vessels that weave in and out of every body part. And with all of them combined, if you started in New York, your blood vessels would make it all the way to the Grand Canyon. It would go on to reach all the way across the Pacific Ocean, over Japan, Asia, and all of Europe. And not only would it make it all the way back to your starting point, but it would be able to make this trip 2 to 4 times over. If you somehow removed all of the blood vessels in your body and tied them together, you might think it would be about this long. But the human body has thousands of these tiny vessels that weave in and out of every body part. And with all of them combined,
history has been made with the first woman to ever complete the Barkley Marathons, aka the race that eats its young. This thing is so tough, 55% of the races since 1989 have ended with 0 finishers, because
technology has improved so much now that cops have developed a device like a gun that
Never buying from a small TikTok business again. This is supposed to be a bottle.
In 2009, an anonymous user on 4chan promised that he would travel to Pakistan to hunt down one of the FBI's most wanted, a terrorist named Osama bin Laden. The user then asked 4chan what he should bring for his mission. Of course, most of 4chan thought it was a troll, but a few users actually believed him and told him that he should bring various things like a katana and night vision goggles. To 4chan's surprise, the anonymous user actually flew out to Pakistan in hopes of taking out Osama bin Laden. However, he wouldn't get too far and got caught while attempting to cross the border into Afghanistan. The anonymous user's name was actually Gary Faulkner, and when he got arrested, he was carrying a pistol, night vision goggles, a copy of the Bible, and a 40-inch katana. Gary claimed that he had a kidney disease and wanted to go out with a bang. 4chan was in awe, and even though Gary failed the mission, he still tried, and in the end, he became a legend on 4chan. In 2009, an anonymous
Someone from China asked a Taiwanese person online saying, hey, brother from Taiwan, where could you possibly recommend for a tourist destination where we could put 3,000 to 5,000 people at once in a landing? Now, it's probably a joke referring to a potential amphibious landing during a Taiwan invasion. Now, in turn, some other Taiwanese person asked on Chinese social media a question about where their province's biggest water reservoirs located at. Now, obviously, this drew a lot of attention because now Chinese internet users actually think that Taiwanese spies are trying to find the location of these water reservoirs so that they can bomb it ahead of the invasion of Taiwan. And they think that the Taiwanese people don't have other means of finding out, right? I mean, don't they have Google? Oh wait, well, Chinese people can't access Google. But anyways, this took another turn when a Taiwanese Reddit user pretended like the post was his, and then he posted it onto r/Taiwanese. And then because there's a lot of mainland Chinese internet users who actually visit this subreddit, it turned into them posting saying that now look at Taiwanese spies, they don't have the budget and they're so dumb that they resort to asking Chinese internet users where their reservoirs are. Someone from China asked a
The eclipse is coming, and since it's such a rare astronomical event, you don't want to miss out. You'll need a pair of glasses that are properly rated. Sunglasses are not enough. You can also find affordable, recyclable paper versions. Solar events happen all the time, so a more durable pair can last you several years. Properly rated glasses will have some safety instructions, so be sure to follow them to protect your eyes. If you are getting glasses last minute, be sure to pick them up from a reputable source. Retailers like Walmart and Amazon should have options. And also check optometry offices and sunglass retailers. They may offer a free pair as a promotion. And for extra
Cold welding, a fascinating phenomenon that takes place in the vacuum of space. Unlike traditional welding, it doesn't require heat. Two similar metals, when brought together in space, will essentially become one. Picture this: two pieces of gold, untouched by air or water, meeting in the void. They spontaneously bond, their atomic structures merging without fuss or fanfare. It's as if they've forgotten they were ever separate. Yet this isn't some cosmic magic. It's science. Without an atmosphere to form a barrier, the atoms have no idea they're not part of the same whole. So next time you're floating in space with an extra piece of gold, remember, it's just waiting to find its other half, just like us perhaps. Cold welding, a testament to unity in the cosmos. Cold welding, a fascinating phenomenon that takes place in the vacuum of space.
On a stationary platform, a ball that is thrown and a dumbbell that is thrust away from you goes straight. On a platform that rotates counterclockwise, the ball and the dumbbell deflect toward the right. And on a platform that rotates clockwise, the ball and the dumbbell deflect toward the left. Ride the Utah State University Coriolis Carousel to learn more. On a stationary platform,
what would happen if you dug a hole from one side of the Earth all the way through to the other side and then jumped in? Well, obviously you would be burnt alive because the core is thousands of degrees, but let's pretend that you are wearing a suit that makes you immune to all of that. As you fall towards the Earth's core, you'll be accelerated, getting quicker due to the pull of Earth's gravity. As you pass through the core, you'll begin to slow down as Earth's gravity is now pulling back against you in the other direction. And the awesome thing is, you'll come out the other side of the hole with precisely 0 velocity. The best part? It would take you just 38 minutes and 11 seconds to complete your trip around, or I guess, through the globe. What would happen if you dug a hole from one side of the Earth all the way through to the other side and then jumped in? Well, obviously you would be burnt alive because the core is thousands of degrees, but let's pretend that you are wearing a suit that makes you immune to all of that. As you fall towards the Earth's core, you'll be accelerated, getting quicker due to the pull of Earth's gravity. As you pass through the core, you'll begin to slow down as Earth's gravity is now pulling back against you in the other direction. And the awesome thing is, you'll come out the other side of the hole.
This is why my Asian eyes don't open wider. Only the eyebrows go up. I learned from a random DM that said, you might have a condition called ptosis like me. They drew this bunny diagram to show me this test. If you place your hand on your forehead, can you open your eyes wider without flexing your forehead? I can't. My eyelid muscles don't work. This is how a normal person opens their eyes wider and looks up. My forehead opens my eyes and my eyelids don't move. I had ptosis all my life and didn't know because my childhood optometrist got shot by her ex at work, so maybe she was distracted. I'm tall and my eyes look more normal looking down, so maybe few noticed. But I'm vulnerable to attacks from above. Racism. Being bullied for my Asian eyes made me not notice a medical condition. This is why my Asian eyes don't open.
I put a camera in my dishwasher a few months back, and tens of thousands of people commented with concern of the not so clear watercolor, lots even vowing to hand wash all their dishes going forward. So I thought, as I just got a tiny Insta360 Go 3 action camera that is both waterproof and has magnetism allowing it to stick to basically anywhere inside, I could finally watch all the phases of the entire wash from multiple angles to figure out if the water ever turns clear, and if so, when in the cycle. Well, it was again a rough start, but I remained calm, as my guess was that it just recycles the water, including what comes off the plate like chili or coffee for the very start of the cycle to save water. With 20 minutes remaining, I checked the action pod where it shows what's recording on the tiny camera, so I could see into the dishwasher and stop recording at any time without even opening it. But I did peek in to do a camera angle reposition at about 10 minutes to go, and this was a shocking sight. With dwindling hope, around 5 minutes ago, what looked like a swamp drained, and at last was the stunning sight of mostly clear water. I had a debatably clean plate, and the Insta360 Go 3 camera survived the heat and the water of the cycle like a champ to be reunited with its action pod. I put a camera in my dishwasher a few months back, and tens of thousands of people commented with concern of the not so clear watercolor, lots even vowing to hand wash all their dishes going forward. So I thought, as I
When you pull the pin on a hand grenade, it releases a safety lever that allows the striker to hit the primer, which ignites a fuse. As the fuse burns down, it gives you only about 5 seconds to throw the grenade before it triggers the explosive charge inside. This explosion causes the outer shell of the grenade to crack, sending shrapnel flying in all directions. When you pull the pin on a hand grenade, it releases a safety lever that allows the striker to hit the primer, which ignites a fuse. As the fuse burns down, it gives you only about 5 seconds to throw the grenade before it triggers the explosive charge inside. This explosion causes the outer shell of the grenade to crack, sending shrapnel flying in all directions. When you pull the pin on a hand grenade, it
This metal ring might look like nothing more than a church door knocker, but for a medieval fugitive on the run, this might have been the difference between life or death. It's called a sanctuary knocker or a sanctuary ring. And under medieval English common law, as long as you were holding on to this knocker, you were offered sanctuary. So this allowed a fugitive to stay in the church, free from prosecution for a period of time, usually about 40 days. So it gave you time to try to reconcile with your enemies or even plan your escape.
A common mistake artists make when drawing the serratus is randomly placing the muscles. This area consists of...
In 2011, an anonymous user on 4chan posted about a mysterious auction they found on eBay. The auction featured two upset kids, with the title saying that they destroyed a bathtub with their Beyblades. 4chan became enraged. Why would the parents of these kids publicly humiliate them online, and on top of that, also try to sell their Beyblades? Because of this, 4chan was determined to figure out a way to make the parents pay for what they had done. 4chan quickly realized they could place the bid on eBay, but not actually follow through with the payment. So they began bidding insane amounts of money for the Beyblades, so that any real bids would be priced out. This went viral, and within a few days, the eBay auction would have over 200,000 views, and the price of the Beyblades had risen to about $1 million. However, eBay began to catch on to what was happening, so they started to remove all the fake bids, but it was too much to handle. So eBay was forced to take down the auction for good. Of course, after some searching, 4chan was able to find the parents' Facebook accounts, so they exposed them to everyone on their friends list. In 2011, an anonymous user on 4chan posted about a mysterious auction they found.
It may seem like overkill, but early on in the shared history of trench coats and greatcoats, there was actually the notion that an officer might want to wear their trench coat over top their greatcoat, combining the nice warmth of their greatcoat with the water resistance of the lighter trench coat on top. Most notably, this was done with the famous British warm greatcoat. It may seem like overkill, but early on in the shared history of trench coats and greatcoats, there was actually the notion that an officer might...
The people who say they left their body, they come above and they see themselves down there on the bed. So what they decided to do is for people who are about to die, they would write a message facing upwards to the ceiling above the bed. So if a person goes above their bed and looks down, they'd be able to read the message. So when they rejoin their body, they should then tell us what message they saw. That's never happened. It's just now. I have a cousin, when her father died, was alone with him in the room, and he's in an open casket. She tells me of a conversation she had with her dead father. And I said, was it in your mind? No, he sat up. I said, what was the conversation? He said, don't worry about him. He's in a better place. This is her eyewitness testimony. I'm not going to say it's wrong. I'm just saying it's not scientifically useful. I told her, next time this happens, ask these questions and not those questions. Don't say, are you happy? No, say, are you wearing clothes? Where are you? Where did you get your clothes? What temperature is it? Because if a dead person sits up and starts talking to me, oh my God. There are people who say they...
Most people think turtles can just slip out of their shells if they want to, but that's actually not true. You see, the shell is much more than a protective armor. It's actually a part of their body. The shell is connected to the turtle's spine and rib cage, making it impossible for them to take it off. It's made up of over 50 bones and even supports bodily functions like breathing. Most people...
Any Dune fans? I'll get a...
It goes in. This ain't Texas. Ain't no hold 'em. Lay your cards down, right? They're not in Texas. Park your Lexus. So we have Texas Lexus. Okay, that's all right, I guess. It's a real life boogie and a real life hoedown. Don't be a bitch. Come take it to the floor. Woo. Don't get me wrong. I love Beyonce. Crazy in Love is one of the best songs. It's got 2 billion streams. Beyonce is so good that you don't even realize how bad the lyrics are.
Damned if I can't slow dance with you. Down, don't be a bitch. Come take it to the floor now. Woo.
It goes in.
This is what happens when you get a tattoo.
Well, Santa, despite the fact that this does look kind of concerning, this is actually completely normal when you get a tattoo. The clip you guys just watched shows a guy in a tub with a fresh tattoo. And more notably, you'll notice off the side of his calf, there's something known as an ink sac, and this one is quite large. This guy does end up popping a video, and it's kind of dramatic. However, this is actually not painful at all, and part of the normal tattoo healing process. After getting a fresh tattoo, tattoo artists will typically either wrap your arm in saran wrap and tape it down, or use something known as Saniderm, which is essentially a second layer of skin that protects your tattoo. And while your tattoo starts to heal, ink and plasma will start leaking out, and it will create this small pool, which is what the ink sac is. All of these examples here, though it looks like this is their skin that has ink in it, it's actually just the second layer, and it is completely normal and pain-free.
This is what happens when you get a tattoo.
My girlfriend gets a DM yesterday from a 10 million follower account. Playboy. Like, yo, wanna work with us, dude? And it's not the first time either. The amount of people that have tried approaching her to convert her into like this OnlyFans, cam, like whatever you want to call it. Because they say, young woman with a big following online that's attractive, yeah, we're gonna try to get that person into work. It's the most disgusting ever. And that's one of the reasons why I hate the normalization of OnlyFans. Not the people that do it, but the normalization of it. Because the problem is when you normalize that all it does is it makes it so that now a bunch of people that would never even consider it are now doing it. And then they're sitting there 5 years later contemplating suicide in game because they did that they hate themselves for doing in game. It's the most disgusting ever. But you can't hate the people that do it. You have to hate the industry in and of itself. My girlfriend gets a DM yesterday from a 10 million follower account. Playboy. Like, yo, wanna work with us, dude? And it's not the first time either. The amount of people that have tried approaching her to convert her into like this OnlyFans, cam, like whatever you want to call it. Because they say, young woman with a big following online that's attractive, yeah, we're gonna try to get that person into work. It's the most disgusting ever. And that's one of the reasons why I hate the normalization of OnlyFans. Not the people that do it, but the normalization of it. Because the problem is when you normalize that all it does is it makes it so that now a bunch of people that would never even consider it are now doing it. And then they're sitting there 5 years later contemplating suicide in game because they did shit that they hate themselves for doing in game. It's the most disgusting shit ever. But you can't hate the people that do it. You have to hate the industry in and of itself. My girlfriend gets a DM yesterday from a 10 million follower account. Playboy. Like, yo, wanna work with us, dude? And it's not the first time either. The amount of people that have tried approaching her to convert her into like this OnlyFans, cam, like whatever you want to call it. Because they say, young woman with a big following online that's attractive, yeah, we're gonna try to get that person into sex work. It's the most disgusting shit ever. And that's one of the reasons why I hate the normalization of OnlyFans. Not the people that do it, but the normalization of it. Because the problem is when you normalize that shit, all it does is it makes it so that now a bunch of people that would...
Have you ever wondered about the mysteries of ancient Greek civilization? What if I told...
If you said one of these phrases 100 years ago, people would think that you were poor. I found this list from the 1930s where linguists listed phrases that they thought made people sound illiterate. And some of them still apply today, like if you heard someone say, "That there rooster's a good'un." But other phrases have become more normal, like today it's no problem to say, "It's real cold outside," or "It sure was good to see Uncle Charles." But people back then would think you were a plebe. One that surprised me is they thought it was wrong to say an item needs fixed. To be fixed technically means to be mounted in place, not just any old repair. So if you use that phrase, they would question whether you received that there diploma. Language is always changing, and one response to that is linguistic purism. Like, there's stigma against people in the South saying, "He might could go to the store," but there's not really an objective reason for why that's wrong. Most of the push for correctness and decency in language simply comes from people not wanting to be perceived as what they think is poor. If you said,
"Two of the following videos are true while the other one is trash. Can you spot the fake?" Round 3, let's begin. A single AA battery can't turn on a standard light bulb because it can only provide about a third of the current that the light bulb would need. However, if you take 3 AA batteries and put them in parallel, the light bulb will be able to turn on, although it can't achieve full brightness. Take the middle seal off a jar and screw the lid back on. Now fill it up with water to the very top. If you quickly and carefully flip the bottle over, yes, some of the water will spill out during the transition, but once it gets completely in the vertical position, the lip on the jar helps the water's surface tension keep most of the water in the jar. The color white is a combination of all wavelengths of light, which is why adding 3 primary colors together and mixing them results in white paint. You've seen all 3 videos now, pause to vote in the comments which one you thought was fake. If you're stressing because all of them seem pretty obviously fake, nice job, because you'd be correct. 2 of the following videos are true while the
People are always telling me, "Royce, you're a sexist. You only ever hire men." That's not true. I hire tons of women. Trans women. Why would I hire a woman with estrogen when I could hire one with testosterone? They're stronger, they're faster, they're smarter, they're hotter. Whoa, you're telling me I can hire someone who has the superior intelligence of a woman and the physical dominance of a man? Yeah, I'll take 6. Hell, I'll have the whole dozen. If you want a fighting chance in this day and age, your company needs to be at least 60% trans. Write that down. People are always telling me, "Royce, you're a sexist. You only ever hire men."
The spinning Earth has a ton of rotational energy. If we were able to extract the energy so that it made the day shorter by just 1 second, it would be enough energy to supply power for the planet for the next 14,000 years. So what if we try to extract the energy with a gyroscope? Because when you start a gyroscope spinning and then rotate the base that's holding it, the gyroscope stays facing in its initial plane of rotation. You can see if I turn in a circle holding the gyroscope, it looks as though the whole gyroscope is magically turning on its own. So what if we just stuck a spinning gyroscope on top of the Earth and then put a generator here? The Soviet Union tried this in the 1960s and were never able to extract any energy. The reason is because when you apply resistance to the axis, this causes the gyroscope to precess and align with the axis of rotation, so you can no longer extract any energy from it. You can see that the gyroscope always ends up wanting to align its axis parallel to the Earth's or the spinning axis. So it seems like a good idea at first until you actually try it. The spinning Earth has a ton of rotational energy. If we were able to extract the energy so that it made the day shorter by just 1 second, it would be enough energy to supply power for the planet for the next 14,000 years. So what if we try to extract the energy with a gyroscope? Because when you start a gyroscope spinning and then rotate the base that's holding it, the gyroscope stays facing in its initial plane of rotation. You can see if I turn in a circle holding the gyroscope, it looks as though the whole gyroscope is magically turning on its own. So what if we just stuck a spinning gyroscope on top of the Earth and then put a generator here? The Soviet Union tried this in the 1960s and were never able to extract any energy. The reason is because when you apply resistance to the axis, this causes the gyroscope to precess and align with the axis of rotation, so you can no longer extract any energy from it. You can see that the gyroscope always ends up wanting to align its axis parallel to the Earth's or the spinning axis. So it seems like a good idea at first until you actually try it. The spinning Earth has a ton of rotational energy. If we were able to extract the energy so that it made the day shorter by just 1 second, it would be enough energy to supply power for the planet for the next 14,000 years. So what if we try to extract the energy with a gyroscope? Because when you start a gyroscope spinning and then rotate the base that's holding it, the gyroscope stays facing in its initial plane of rotation. You can see if I turn in a circle holding the gyroscope, it looks as though the whole gyroscope is magically turning on its own. So what if we just stuck a spinning gyroscope on top of the Earth and then put a generator here? The Soviet Union tried this in the 1960s and were never able to extract any energy. The reason is because when you apply resistance to the axis, this causes the gyroscope to precess and align with the axis of rotation, so you can no longer extract any energy from it. You can see that the gyroscope always ends up wanting to align its axis parallel to the Earth's or the spinning axis. So it seems like a good idea at first until you actually try it. The spinning Earth has a ton of rotational energy. If we were able to extract the energy so that it made the day shorter by just 1 second, it would be enough energy to supply power for the planet for the next 14,000 years. So what if we try to extract the energy with a gyroscope? Because when you start a gyroscope spinning and then rotate the base that's holding it, the gyroscope stays facing in its initial plane of rotation. You can see if I turn in a circle holding the gyroscope, it looks as though the whole gyroscope is magically turning on its own. So what if we just stuck a spinning gyroscope on top of the Earth and then put a generator here? The Soviet Union tried this in the 1960s and were never able to extract any energy. The reason is because when you apply resistance to the axis, this causes the gyroscope to precess and align with the axis of rotation.
When footballers take off their shirts to celebrate goals, they're punished with a yellow card. But why?
Did you know the flag placed on the moon is not a normal flag? Yep, if you look closely, you'll...
Did you know that dolphins consume one of the deadliest poisons in the world just to get high from it? They do this by first surrounding a pufferfish and proceeding to take turns lightly biting on it. Not only will they nudge and bite the pufferfish, the pot of dolphins will take it a step further by launching him out of the water and playing catch with him, making sure that that pufferfish is completely traumatized for the rest of its existence. And as you can imagine, this causes the puffer to go into a full panic, triggering its defense mechanism, releasing a toxic poison called tetrodotoxin, which is one of the most deadly poisons in the world. To put it into perspective, one pufferfish has enough poison to kill 30 adult humans. Now, even though it's deadly, dolphins have learned exactly how much of the poison they can tolerate without dying. They've actually been filmed passing the puffer around for 20 to 30 minutes at a time before letting it swim off. The effects that the poison has on the dolphins is pretty interesting. They seem to go into a euphoric state where they become very calm and relaxed, even being mesmerized by their own reflection on the surface of the water. Did you know that dolphins consume one of the deadliest poisons in the world just to get high from it? They do this by first surrounding a pufferfish and proceeding to take turns lightly biting on it. Not only will they nudge and bite the pufferfish, the pot of dolphins will take it a step further by launching him out of the water and playing catch with him, making sure that that pufferfish is completely traumatized.
This Trackmania player.
Here's when the leaning
Why don't these cool ornithopters from Dune exist in real life? To answer that, here's how a helicopter works and how these would compare. A normal helicopter can fly because its wings are curved on the top and flat on the bottom, so that when air moves over them, it moves faster above than below. Faster air means lower pressure, so lower pressure above, higher pressure below, you get lift. To do that, you need lots of air moving really fast, which is why it needs the spin. The ornithopters in Dune are different though. They mimic the way a bird or an insect flies, by flapping wings, pushing the air downward and giving lift that way. But birds and insects are their size for a reason. If you wanted to create a full-size working ornithopter, you would need giant wings. I'm talking like the size of a football field to lift the average helicopter. And those football field-sized wings would need to flap really fast. So very cool, but not super practical. But my favorite part of this story is that helicopters themselves were in part inspired by science fiction. The father of modern helicopters said that he got the idea from a fictional version in a Jules Verne book that he read as a kid. I love how sci-fi can inspire.
First up, what?
People who underwent anti-homosexual therapy, what was it like? My extremely conservative parents sent me to a Christian counselor at 14, and our sessions were just 2 hours of him berating and yelling at me, telling me I was doomed to burn in hell. I usually cried through these sessions, and after 6 months my mom realized this wasn't working, so she found a different Christian counseling center and took me to it. I bawled my eyes out when she forced me to go a second time, but I went anyway. I loved my mom and hoped that if I just stuck it out, she'd realize it wasn't working and would stop trying to convert me. This counselor was very different from the first one. He was extremely gentle, and he understood that I was not going to stop being gay. We talked about how to make my parents accept who I was, and he helped me work through a lot of other problems too. I went to him every other week for the next 4 years, and we developed a very nice relationship. It's over these 4 years that he and I were able to make my parents accept who I was, and it's thanks to him that my relationship with them remains strong to this day. People who underwent anti-homosexual therapy, what was it like? My extremely conservative parents sent me to a Christian counselor at 14, and our sessions were just 2 hours of him berating and yelling at me, telling me I was doomed to burn in hell. I usually cried through these sessions, and after 6 months my mom realized this wasn't working, so she found a different Christian counseling center and took me to it. I bawled my eyes out when she forced me to go a second time, but I went anyway. I loved my mom and hoped that if I just stuck it out, she'd realize it wasn't working and would stop trying to convert me. This counselor was very different from the first one. He was extremely gentle, and he understood that I was not going to stop being gay. We talked about how to make my parents accept who I was, and he helped me work through a lot of other problems too. I went to him every other week for the next 4 years, and we developed a very nice relationship. It's over these 4 years that he and I were able to make my parents accept who I was, and it's thanks to him that my relationship with them remains strong to this day. People who underwent anti-homosexual therapy, what was it like?